today, as you can see from the title, we're gonna be talking about my roommate experience and basically analyzing this year's roommate experience in comparison towards my last year's roommate experience. But before we do, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I go live, upload videos and shorts. Now, let's get on with the video, and I have some notes here. So I make sure to cover as much as I could in this time span. So yeah, let's get started. Anyways, I would like to point out that the roommate I had this year and the roommate I had last year was like two opposite experience, like there's so much happened this year that I was not expecting because of how such a positive roommate experience I had the year prior, my first year in college. So in my first year of college, my roommate, she wasn't always in the room. And sometimes she would come to the room late just because the way her schedule was, she just had to always be out. She was also part of the theater program and constantly doing plays, and rather being off or on stage, she was always doing something. But even when she was in the room, she was very respectful. We communicated who's gonna take out the trash and who's gonna do all sorts of things. Like, we both kept our room clean, okay? Now, knowing that, this year's roommate, I stated in our roommate contract that we should be taking out the trash every week, okay? Now, for a good half of the first semester, I noticed I was the only one taking out the trash. And here's the thing, it would have been fine if it was only my trash, but it wasn't. It was a mixture of mine and hers. Yet she never decided to take out the trash or never even asked. One day I did ask her to take it out, and she was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But she never took out the trash again until I asked her to. And so I told her, I'm kind of annoyed of how you're using this trash can, but you never take it out. In fact, I stopped using it one time, like altogether, and just like, I'll just throw my trash away at the end of the day in like plastic bags that I get from the store. She ended up having like old milkshakes, old like drinks from Starbucks that contain milk left in that trash can. I wasn't aware of it. And old milk was just sitting in our trash can for a long time, like over at least a week or two, maybe even more. Eventually I asked her, did you throw away any milk? And she said yes. I'm like, you should be throwing away products that use milk at the end of the day. Don't let them sit in the trash can. And she claims she didn't know, but yeah, there's not much I could go off of that, because if she claims she didn't know, she didn't supposedly know. So besides from this previous roommate not taking out her trash, she also had this habit of staying in her bed all day and not doing anything, but then complaining that she's tired, that she feels weak, or that she feels bored all the time. And I never directly said this, but in my head I'm just like, but you choose to lay in bed all day. That's kind of on you. If you don't want to feel bored, then go do something. And she did get involved in like the film club for half of the first semester, but then she stopped going. And I was like, okay. And another thing is, whenever she's in the room, she always hated having the lights on, and I preferred having the lights on in my room, okay? So I wasn't aware that she didn't like not having the lights. But every time I would leave the room for like, even for like 5 minutes, I would leave the room with the lights on. I'd come back, they're already off. And I was like, oh, if you want, I could just turn off the light whenever I leave. And she's like, no, it's fine. I was like, okay. And so I continued to like leave the light on while she's still in the room while I leave. And every time I come back, the light is off. And I was like, well, that seems like an inconvenience to her. So I brought it up again and she's like, no, it's fine. I was like, okay. Knowing it's not fine because she keeps turning it off when I leave. And I found this strange. So eventually I basically just started turning off the light whenever I left the room, thinking, I don't know, maybe it would be better for her or something, but she never mentioned it. And so I thought that was strange in a bit. And another thing with my last roommate, the one I just had, is that I would ask if she wanted to go anywhere on the weekend, because I keep hearing her say she's bored on the phone to her mom and to her sisters and to her family, because we're like, what, 10 feet apart? At least our beds, our desks are even closer, because it was like our beds, our desk were right next to each other. So I hear every phone call she has. That's another thing. She would have daily phone calls that go on for 2 hours with her family while I'm trying to do homework. And I've brought it up. And I've brought this up multiple of times, okay? But, sorry, the tripod just gave out a bit, so I think it's running out of batteries. Anyways, sorry. Anyways, so I brought it up that, hey, if you're going to have these long phone calls, can you go do them somewhere else? And instead of saying, yeah, sure, she automatically just ended her phone call. And I didn't say anything because I don't want to be rude and say that's not what I meant. Because I'm like, you could have your phone calls, just like go to the hallway or go to another room. Because there was rooms in our dorm where you could go do homework or something. And if no one's in there, well, then you could have a phone call. Or even like go to the lobby, because most of the time no one's really in the dorm lobby most of the time. But instead she just ended the phone call, which, yeah, it solved the solution at that point. And keep in mind, when I asked her to go somewhere else, it was at this point 10 p.m. or even 11 p.m. and she's been on the phone for 3 hours. At that point, it was one of the situations. And there was a few other times where she would have phone calls that would go past 10 p.m., her in her bed, me evidently trying to fall asleep or study. But I typically don't study after 10 p.m. because I need to get rest, because every class I had this past 2 semesters I had a class starting every day at 8 a.m. for the most part. This past semester, I had a class starting at 8 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. The previous semester, I had 3 days, where I had classes starting at 8 p.m. the earliest. And she still continued to have phone calls so late into the evening, even though I asked her multiple times, if you're going to have phone calls that go on for 2 hours or so late into the evening, can you please go somewhere else? Yet she never did, which I found was strange, because every time I had a phone call, at first I didn't even want to have a phone call in front of her, because I don't want someone listening in on my conversation like I have been listening to hers, because it's hard not to when that person is, like I said, not even 10 feet away from you. And you could just hear everything. Not that I wanted to, but just because we were so close, physically in proximity of each other, it was hard to concentrate on whatever work I wanted to do, because I could hear everything, and I didn't want to. So I ended up, at the beginning of the school year, throughout the whole school year this year, I took my phone calls like in my car. because I'm like, I don't want anyone to listen in on my phone calls. Like, that's a conversation between me and whoever's on the other line, you know? But apparently she did not have the same thoughts, I guess. And this past roommate experience was so strange because throughout the year I learned that she was unmotivated. I questioned why she was even in school because she didn't always go to every class. She would just lay in bed all day and only went to class if attendance was required, which when you go to college, there's some classes that require attendance as points, and then there's some classes that don't, okay? So she only went to the classes that required her to go because attendance was a big factor in the grade. And I found it strange how she stopped going to film club. She only went for not even 8 weeks, which is like half of a semester. So I think she went for like a quarter of a semester, which is only 4 times. And like that was the only thing she did, and she only did that for 4 weeks. And she would just stay in bed all day, watch movies. When she chooses to study, it was always when I was going to sleep, like around 10, which I found even more strange because she basically laid in bed all day. And I asked her, if you're on the phone with your family for at least 2 hours per day, why did you choose to go to school far away from your family? And she never really gave me an answer, just said, because why not? So I found that even more, this just seems strange to me because, like, if you want to talk to your family that much every day, wouldn't it make more sense to go to the school more close to home and not one that's 5-6 hours away? Like, and also, how do you have that much time to call people 2 hours every day? I found that even, I keep saying strange, and it's just because this whole year with this roommate was different than I've ever experienced before. And something I did notice was that my roommate last year to this previous roommate made me realize that the people you surround yourself, whether you choose to surround yourself with them or they're your roommate and you kind of have to be in proximity of them, it alternates your mindset. Because what I noticed last year, because my roommate was constantly out and doing stuff, I wanted to be out and doing stuff outside my room. Like, I never wanted to be out in my room because my roommate wasn't there. So I'm like, oh, I should be out and doing things as well. You know, in a way, my past roommate inspired me to like go out and do stuff and hang out with people. Well, this past roommate, because she was constantly in her bed, I slowly, don't like to admit it because I don't like it that I did this, I slowly adapted to being in my room more than I liked. I didn't go out as much. Although I still worked out, which I'm glad I did, because she always stated how she wanted to go to the gym, but she never did, which does, like, how can you state you want to do something but then don't do it? That just, you're like manipulating your brain to saying you want something but then you're not going after it, and that's just not healthy. So even though I still continued to work out, it wasn't as much as I did the year prior. It went from like 3 times a week to once every once in a while, twice a week. And I wasn't going out like having fun with friends or just even hanging out with people or going to clubs. And so when I noticed I started to do that, I started to change, and I started going, I started doing my homework in the library just so that I could be out of the room, out of that environment. And I noticed when I was at the library, I was getting my homework done much more quicker, much more effectively. And I noticed, okay, I need to keep doing that and basically space myself away from her in order to stay on track of what I wanted to accomplish in college. And so message from my experience is that surround yourself with people that you want to be and not someone that you don't want to be like, because the people you surround yourself, you're going to slowly adapt to their behaviors as well. You're going to slowly, in a way, become them in their behaviors. Like if you're around someone that's constantly doing work and constantly working on themselves, eventually you're going to be like, you're going to slowly do that with yourself. But if you're constantly around someone who doesn't do anything, complains, sits in bed all day, you're slowly going to become that person as well. And now I didn't really choose my roommates. So even when you're put in a situation where you can't control who you're in proximity with, like my roommate situation, I did a random roommate. In fact, this past school year, I transferred. So I took whatever the next available room, the next available dorm was. Okay. And so if you're in a situation like me, like you don't want to be your roommate, well then go out and go do something else. Don't spend a lot of time in your dorm. Like surround yourself with other people in those cases. But that's all I have for y'all right at this moment. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I go live. I upload videos, shorts, and be sure to comment your roommate experience. And be sure to like this video, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.